Well, as more companies sign on, the real test is going to be how quickly Americans actually see lower prices at the pharmacy. Joining us now is Dr. Monica Gorman. She's a former special assistant to President Biden for manufacturing and industrial policy and is now a managing director at Crowell Global Advisors. Nice to have you here. Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks for having me.
So, as outlined, Pfizer is the first pharmaceutical company to agree to all of the president's demands on lowering these drug costs. And he said on Monday during this Oval Office briefing that he expects more companies to be following suit. So we should be seeing more of this. How do you foresee this changing the landscape for Americans?
So it's potentially a very interesting concept. And what we see based on what we know so far is that this is a direct-to-consumer platform. And one of the biggest challenges in the American healthcare system right now is that there are so many middlemen between the drug manufacturer and the patient. You have pharmacy benefit managers, you have all of these middlemen who not only are making the system opaque, so it's not always clear what the price of the drug is, but they're also taking profits throughout the system. And so this potentially direct-to-consumer is interesting in that it will start to streamline the process.
Look, if it hasn't, go ahead. Go ahead.
It raises a lot of questions, though. We have a lot of unanswered questions at the moment.
Okay, yeah. So what are your biggest concerns with this? You know, this was a big announcement yesterday. Everybody wants lower drug costs. You know, where you sit is on the opposite side of the aisle. So how do you see it?
Well, certainly it's a bipartisan push. We all want to see lower drug costs for Americans. But I think in terms of the questions that I have, if you're covered by insurance, will your health insurance apply here? Because most Americans get their drugs through their health insurance. Will it apply to employer plans? Because again, a lot of Americans are covered by employer plans. Is the government getting into the business of serving as an online pharmacy? Is it going to be verifying your prescription? So how exactly is this going to work? That is at the top of my list right now.
All right. Well, Dr. Oz, the administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, talked about this last night on the Hill. Listen to this.
The system that had been codified was not working. If you go and talk to the individual pharmacy CEOs in person, in private, and that's what we did. You know, we developed personal relationships and say, you went into this business because you cared about people. You have to, because you didn't pick this field. It's hard to be a pharmacy CEO. So what gives? Why would you and how would you defend charging 3 times more for the exact same product made in the same factory, in the same box, in the same bottle for an American than you would for overseas?
Yeah, so this really goes back to what President Trump has said, you know, along the campaign trail, too. He doesn't want Americans to get ripped off. It's the same reason that he's doing all of this with tariffs. Politically speaking, how do you think this sits with him? He did not get the best reviews when he unveiled the whole Tylenol press conference. Was that a couple of weeks ago now? Did this go over a bit better? And was it helpful to have Dr. Oz and Bobby RFK Jr., the HHS secretary, there making some announcements?
Well, Americans know they pay too much for their drugs. So I think that is a bipartisan concern. And certainly I would applaud President Trump for tackling it. But again, how are we going to see this come to light? What products are going to be available on the website? And it's important to remember that 90% of the prescriptions that Americans take are generics. They're not going to be touched by this. They're already pretty cheap. So it's really going to come down to how this comes to life. Are Americans going to see the extra savings in their pockets when they're going to buy their medications? If they do, then it's fantastic. But again, let's see how it comes to life.
Well, my producers have flagged, they've said, look, is there a loophole here where drug companies could simply, you know, raise prices in other countries so they don't have to lower the cost in America as much?
Well, I believe it's intended to be based on a formula. So it's a basket of prices based on the G7 and a few other countries put in there. But these companies ultimately are in a business. They want to be able to sell their products. They're going to have to be at prices that people are going to pay. So let's see. But again, if you think about the way the pricing works, it's pretty hard to understand what the list price of a drug actually is because of all those middlemen. So the biggest savings here may actually be being able to pay directly to consumers.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we're buying drugs for ourselves, for our kids, for our parents, it all really adds up. And if we haven't been there ourselves, we know somebody who has decided not to get a medication that they may have needed to even change their life or save their life because of the cost. Dr. Monica Gorman, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.